No.
So that is called free soloing.
Okay.
Essentially, I'll explain that for people who don't know much about rock climbing. Free climbing, people call free climbing climbing without ropes.
Right.
Free climbing can be done with ropes. Essentially, what it means is free of aid. Aid is anytime you use your gear to cheat. So if you stick a piece of gear in the wall and you pull on it instead of climbing the rock with your hands, you're aid climbing.
Ah,
If you put gear in the wall and you clip your rope to it, but you're only using your hands and feet on the rock, that's free climbing.
okay.
Um, Free soloing is when you don't have a partner and therefore the rope would be irrelevant, so you don't bring one, and you're just climbing with your hands and feet, no ropes, no protective equipment. One fall, you're done. I don't free
Right.
solo.
Yeah.
I vastly prefer to
I'm
try
happy
and
you
climb
did.
hard. Yeah, with the rope.
Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that wonder where is Prince George, well, everybody knows where Canada is, then everybody knows where British Columbia is, big province, and knows where Vancouver is. We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver, and which is also 800 kilometers for our friends in Europe. And it's in the center of British Columbia. Amazing province. Amazing, you like this one, Ryan. Amazing skiing, mountains all over the place, and then lots of nature and all of those things. So today, a very, very special guest. His name is Ryan DeLena. DeLena is his name. He is an amazing young fellow. He has had his challenges as a young fellow in our traditional schooling system, found his niche in becoming a skier and then a mountain climber, and became very, very successful. He's an author together with his dad, Rob DeLena, in a book. What's the title of the book again, Ryan?
Without restraint.
Without Restraint. And he's going to tell us all about that. And so, with that, then, welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hi, glad to be here. It's funny you mentioned British Columbia and the skiing there. I was just in Whistler, Blackcomb area, and we did a traverse called the Spearhead Traverse. It crosses about 10 glaciers over about 6,000 feet of elevation gain. And generally, it starts at Blackcomb Mountain, and it does about 11 different transitions all around this big horseshoe of mountains and ends at Whistler. But this year, Blackcomb closed early, so we did it in reverse from Whistler, spending 2 nights in the Keys and Clare hut, and then did it in one big push on a beautiful day. So stoked to hear that
Amazing.
you live out
Yeah.
there. That's a special place in the world.
Yeah. Is that the first time that you were there?
No, so I went when I was younger with my family a couple times, but that felt like the first time I'd experienced it as an adult, and it was a really beautiful way to experience it, to be up in the high mountains like that. So that was very special.
Yeah. And for all the watchers around the world, and especially the ones that like the outdoors, and in particular the ones that love skiing, probably Whistler is one of the best skiing areas in the world, I would suggest. You probably have seen much of it. I know also about Ryan. He has been involved in the backcountry and skiing, and all over the ski in the United States, Canada, Chile, Argentina, the America, Ryan, and skied. And he's a rock climber and a hiker. Tell us all about it,
Oh yeah.
Ryan. Start with what happened in your schooling. So, where did you grow up? In which area of the United States?
So I grew up in Sudbury, Massachusetts, which is about a half hour outside of Boston.
Right.
Um, yeah, kind of small town. Like not super small, not like one farm and like your neighbors are all spread out, but it's smaller than Framingham and some of the surrounding Eastern
Right.
Mass towns. Um, Things kind of went right off the rails for me pretty early on. I really did not like to sit still, and I did not respond well to preschool and to um, my sort of first experiences trending towards kindergarten. And it's funny to think that, like, you can be that young and have things be going off the rails. Um,
Yeah.
but I was evaluated at that age by a neuropsychologist who suggested that my life going onward was going to be very challenging and that I wasn't going to respond well to the environment in public school, and
Right.
suggested moving me to a therapeutic school.
Right.
And that was kind of mistake number one. Um, yeah,
Did
so
did they
when I
do?
got moved,
Yeah. So
what were you going to say?
they move you to a therapeutic school?
Yeah, so they moved me to a therapeutic school when I was around 5 years old. I won't say the name because we didn't in the book, and I don't remember the fake name. So they moved me to my first therapeutic school when I was around 5 years old, and one thing in particular about this school that made it different from any other schooling environment that like most people are used to is if you got in trouble, what they could do is they could essentially put their hands on you and put you on the floor like a wrestling match, and they could keep you there until you stopped fighting back. Um, and it's crazy to think that this was at one time legal, but this was happening every day, multiple times a day, to me, to other students, starting at the age of 5. So my schooling experience was very traumatizing for me.
Yeah.
I really did not respond well to restraints. I It really triggered my fight or flight response. And of course, I'm going home and I'm telling my family about this, and they think I'm just a young kid who's exaggerating. But I really felt like my life was in danger. There were times they were covering my mouth and I couldn't breathe. And it took a while for my parents to realize it. And ultimately, skiing was what helped my dad, who was the first one to kind of see through the mist, um, realize what was going wrong.
And then?
Yeah, so um, my dad took me skiing for the first time when I was 7 years old at Neshoba Valley, and he hadn't skied in 20 years. It was just one of those intuition moments of like, you know what? It's a cold day. He's got a week off for winter break. He's gonna get bored. We should just go skiing. I doubt it's gonna go well because at that point, nothing in my life had gone well.
Did he
He didn't think
have
we were
a
gonna make it through the
plan?
rental.
Did he have a reason for doing it then? Because
Not at
he hadn't
all.
been skiing in 20 years, really. And why would he take this kid that has all these issues and take him of all places, put him on skis? And what did he see?
It was really just a shot in the dark. He likes to tell it. He's driven by the resort and has, or it's hardly a resort, it's a ski area, and just thought of it one day. But I chalk it up to divine intervention. If I didn't find skiing, I don't know where I'd be right now, and I don't know who or what planted the seed in his head, but he just felt like it was what we needed to do, and we ended up going there. And not only did I make it through the rental process, but I was able to ski Black Diamonds pretty much my like first or second day. Um, I was already able to ski down the magic carpet without falling on the first run, and I became a ski instructor later in life. And of course, as a kid, I just thought this was normal. Most of the kids I work with, we spend the whole first day just trying to get them to stand up.
Yeah,
So something about
yeah.
it just took to me very naturally.
So that was the key, right? So that one click, finally something that
Yes.
you were successful at.
Yeah, it was the first time I felt any sort of positive reinforcement in my life. I'm just going to move you because the sun
Yeah,
is
yeah, it's fine.
changing angles and shining through the window here.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, skiing was the first time that I felt like not only did I have that positive reinforcement of like, wow, I'm good at something. It was kind of the first time I got to be a kid. Like
Yeah.
all of this drama in my life started when I was so young, 5 years old, and started skiing when I was around 7, and I didn't really have I didn't have T-ball. I didn't have like, the kids soccer team, like all of these things that like you have when you're a kid. I just didn't get to have. I was getting restrained every day. I was scared for my safety going to school. I was having people tell me I was going to be dead or in jail by the time I was 18. And all of a sudden I have this thing and it's just fun. It's just pure enjoyment. I know when those skis are on my feet, I'm going to have a good day. And it really changed everything.
So, what happened to your schooling then? Did that change going to school as well for you? Did you kind of settle down then, or what happened there? Now you finally found something that you were good at, not only good, beyond good. And so you were still only 7, 8, 9 years old. Were you still going to school then? Or what happened there?
Yeah. So at that point, it didn't make school better right away. There's an important nuance. There was probably 10 years of my life where school was an agonizing struggle. But skiing was on the up and up. Um, but what changed with skiing is for the first time, just like for the first time I got to experience being a kid, my dad got to see me in an environment where I didn't feel threatened. And when we were skiing together, we weren't having issues out on the hill. And he was starting to think maybe it's not this kid's fault because the school always justified it and portrayed it as like, well, if we didn't restrain him, he was going to be a danger to himself or others. And he saw me out on the hill and he's like, this kid isn't having issues every 5 minutes. He's not a danger to himself or others. Maybe he's just responding to his environment. So he brought that to the school and he tried to get them to stop restraining me. And they're like, great, every time we have an issue, we're just going to call you and you can come pick him up. And there was one day he drove like out of the parking lot, pulled over, and 10 minutes later they called him and they're like, yep, you got to pick him up. And he pulled me out of my first therapeutic school. For a while, I didn't really have anywhere to go. Made mistake number 2. I ended up going to a mental hospital. I was supposed to be there for a day. I ended up being there for 2 weeks because I completely unraveled. I thought I was being abandoned. I had full blown PTSD at that point, and they just kept keeping me another day because they didn't think I was ready to leave. I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life there. And when I ultimately got out, they recommended that he put me into a residential facility, and instead we went on a ski trip, and we're like, we're not doing this anymore. We don't care how long it takes, but we're gonna find the road back to normal life, back to public school. We're not going this route anymore because every single person up to this point has only led us further from the path.
Now, did you have any siblings?
So I had a sister. She was 16 months younger than me.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting because she didn't have any of this stuff. She went to public school until high school when she ended up going to boarding school and had a normal upbringing. And that was tough for me to see because I had a measure. I knew that her life wasn't like that. I was jealous of the things that she got to have and experience. But at the same time, it wasn't like it didn't impact her because having a brother that had so much going on and had to deal with restraints and had to deal with the mental hospital, had to deal with the medication side effects backfiring and almost killing me. It took attention away from her, and she felt a little abandoned, and she ended
Yeah.
up developing some anxiety from that. So
Yeah.
even though she wasn't living it, it left scars on her equally.
Right. So then what happened then? So now you were kind of getting settled in. You were out of that school. Your dad decided, no, this is not the place for Ryan to be. So then you started to do more skiing. I'm guessing now, started feeling better about yourself, stayed in school, and things started turning around as you became somewhat older, or where did it take you?
Yeah, so essentially the thing they don't tell you when you move out of the district is when you go to a therapeutic school, they offer you accommodations, whether it's like, oh, this school does restraints, this school has a one-to-one aid, this school is going to provide you a scribe. And whenever you're struggling, they offer you this, and then you're like, oh, yes, of course, we'll take it, anything that helps. Well, most people don't try and get out of the therapeutic school system once they're in it. So when we
Right.
tried to go back, reverse course, this didn't work. They're like, well, he had all these accommodations that we don't provide at this school. He has to do a year somewhere else and prove that he doesn't need these accommodations. Well, that wasn't realistic for me at that point. Um, when I sensed any conflict with adults, I would either fight until my body was too tired, or I would run and like climb up a tree or like try and hide in the woods or something, like complete fight or flight. So it put me in this limbo of like school and restraints were traumatizing me, but I couldn't leave. So that was why we got talked into the mental hospital, was like, oh, maybe if he gets on medication, it'll help. Um,
How old are you
after we
now there at that point?
at this, I'm 9 years old at this point.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm 9 years old. We get back from this ski trip. I'm out of the mental hospital. We don't really have a plan for me. Eventually, we found a school that would take me. Um, this one we didn't talk negatively about, so I will name them. I went to this school called the Walker School.
Yeah.
I was there for 4 years, and I did a lot of healing there. They still did restraints there, and honestly, the people who were the saving grace were the teachers' aides, the interns, the people who weren't as involved in the dogma, and they were able to help me recognize the patterns that were happening, where I was losing my logic and dropping into that fight or flight, and how that was leading me to these events, and that helped me recover a lot. So at this point, I'm still skiing. I'm getting better and better at skiing.
Now you're
4 years passed, and
13. So
yeah,
you were there for
now
4 years. You were there
I
then
was there for 4
13.
years.
You're getting better and
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Okay.
getting better and better at skiing. At this point, we're starting to travel different places.
Build
Um, a couple,
self-confidence.
yes, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the only thing I had as a source of self confidence. In those environments, there's a lot of being told where you won't go in life because of
Right.
who you are.
Yeah.
And skiing was a creative freedom of like, as long as I keep putting effort into this thing, I can achieve goals that I want to. It doesn't matter who I am. It doesn't matter if I have this label of like, oh, I'm a special needs kid. Oh, I'm like in therapeutic schools. It's a, can you ski the mountain or can you not? And if you can go a lot of really cool places.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so that was cool. Um, the problem at that point was I ended up aging out of that school, and I had to go to a different one that was way worse.
Oh
Wouldn't even
no.
let you walk down the hallway or go to the bathroom
How
without somebody
how
accompanying you. And
how
they
old are you there?
now this is my early high school years.
Okay, so
Um,
you now 14, 15, or what? What?
yeah, so now this is from when I'm 13 to when I'm 15, because I went to
Okay.
three different high
Yeah,
schools,
yeah.
and the third
Okay.
one ultimately being public school.
So was
So
that
yeah,
a
I go to
special school again? Because why were they so
yes.
strict? Okay. Okay.
So this school was they pitched it to us as this is a collaborative problem solving school. So it's like we're not like the other schools that just restrain. we collaborate and we help work through things with kids, which was just a lie. They had an incident at some point with a student, I guess, getting assaulted by a staff, and they changed their whole model and they made it just like all the other schools that were strict. And not only did they do restraints, they had seclusion rooms, so they would lock you in a room with no walls, or no, not on, with four walls and no windows, and about this wide, and they could keep you in there as long as you wanted. If school ended, they'd just tell your parents to come pick you up, and they'd keep you in there until they felt you were ready to come out. So that was a whole new thing to navigate with me, and at that point, I was about ready to drop out, and I promised myself if I made it to my birthday and I was still in that school, I was just going to stop showing up to school. And 3 days before my birthday, my dad went to a meeting and threw a fit, and somebody decided to work with him a little bit and told him about a different program that we hadn't heard of yet. Didn't do any restraints. I ended up doing a year in that program and then ultimately going back to public school when I was 16. That was the best thing for me.
Yeah. And then you stayed in school, the
Yeah,
normal
so I stayed
school.
in school. Got through that year at this like 1 year program. Went back to public school. I guess I should say I'll backtrack a little bit in the ski world, because like I said, these tracks are running alongside each other separately, getting closer to merging. When I was 12 years old, I met a instructor, guide, incredible skier out in Big Sky, Montana, named Ben Brousseau. And he kind of became a mentor to me and helped me really take my skiing to the next level.
Right.
We've skied some incredible things together. We've actually tail guided in Antarctica together. Um, not on the same team, but on the same boat. And I'm getting real good at skiing now. Finally, these two paths merge, and I go back to public school, and I really thrived in that environment. I was always so nervous about what the real world was like, but being in the environment I should have been in all along was really what I needed to mellow out. And I ended up
Right.
having a really great schooling experience there.
Right.
Ended up going to Antarctica with my dad my senior year and discovering the profession of guiding, meeting people who had made their livings taking people into the mountains and giving them ski experiences they couldn't have otherwise had. And I
Right.
realized, like, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be like my mentors. I want to use this talent that's kept me going and has given me the self confidence to be who I am, and I want to share that with other people. So that becomes my path.
Right. And that's what you're doing today.
So right now, I'm actually in Acadia National Park. I take people rock climbing. If you ever find yourself in Acadia National Park, you can call Acadia Mountain Guides. Ask for Ryan, Ryan DeLena. Say the one with the book, and they'll know. And I can take you out to the cliffs, and I'll take you climbing. I ski instructed for a while in the winter. Right now, I'm trying to work through the necessary certifications so that I can guide backcountry skiing. It's interesting. I started rock climbing later, but it's much easier to get through the rock climbing certifications than it is to get the resume necessary for the ski certifications. You need some like very advanced avalanche assessment skills that you get evaluated on in this course called the Pro One. And I'm trying to do that this winter so I can start taking my ski guide courses.
I hope you're not rock climbing and the rock climbing that is like this and you're kind of hanging there, no restraints, and you God knows how many hundreds of feet above it, and may one slip and you fall off. No.
So that is called free soloing.
Okay.
Essentially, I'll explain that for people who don't know much about rock climbing. Free climbing, people call free climbing climbing without ropes.
Right.
Free climbing can be done with ropes. Essentially, what it means is free of aid. Aid is anytime you use your gear to cheat. So if you stick a piece of gear in the wall and you pull on it instead of climbing the rock with your hands, you're aid climbing.
Ah,
If you put gear in the wall and you clip your rope to it, but you're only using your hands and feet on the rock, that's free climbing.
okay.
Free soloing is when you don't have a partner and therefore the rope would be irrelevant, so you don't bring one, and you're just climbing with your hands and feet, no ropes, no protective equipment, one fall, you're done. I don't free
Right.
solo. I
Yeah.
vastly prefer to
I'm
try
happy
and
you
climb
did.
hard. Yeah, with the rope.
So, how do you feel now, Ryan, in terms of looking back? Obviously, you and your dad wrote a book together. You know, have you got a copy of the book close by that we can look at from the outside? Is it available on all the different media?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have one in the van. It would take me
No,
a
no,
minute and a half to run to my car and get it. So I don't know if I want to do that to your viewers.
no.
But the book is called Without Restraint. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Goodreads. You can find it on at Walmart. Like essentially any online service, Barnes and Noble, you will be able to find it
Yeah,
in
we
your
will
local
find it.
bookstore.
We will show it on the actual podcast that we release tomorrow. We'll find it on the media and then kind of reflect it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the one with a skier on the front. There's like a couple books by the same title that are about bondage, but it's not our book. It'd be really weird if the father son book was about bondage. Um, but yeah. Anyways, you can find the book pretty much anywhere. In local bookstores, you probably won't find it unless you're from like kind of our area.
Right.
But yeah, it's available anywhere.
So you feel pretty good about going forward now, right? And having that other stuff all behind you must have
Mhm.
been a real challenge. And as you already indicated, you developed PTSD from the times that you were restrained over and over and over again. So
Mhm.
did you get counseling and all of those things to kind of
Yeah.
get
So
that
I
behind
had
you?
Yeah, I was in therapy for a long time. Um I was on medication. I'm not on any medication anymore. And that was
Right,
the best decision for me too. Ultimately, I was being mismedicated and I didn't need that. Um the threads of trauma are complex. You know, I don't have that fight or flight response that's so volatile that I had when I was, a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid.
right,
Um it comes up in little ways like fatalism of just like when stuff starts to go wrong you assume everything is going to go wrong, like just
right,
that pattern of like, oh, this next school is going to be better and it just like isn't better. Oh, you can trust
right,
these people and you like can't trust these people. But I work through that every day. And I'm aware of it and I can recognize when it's coming up, when it's a trauma
right,
influenced voice and not my voice.
right.
But I've really made peace with that journey. I think writing that book helped me get a lot of that out of me.
Yeah,
I think the hardest part wasn't even that it happened to me so much because I got through it and came out on top. It, I didn't feel like a victim. I was always worried that people who had been through the normal track of education wouldn't understand me. Would try and make it my fault somehow, or think that I'm weird or crazy or something. So I always hid it from people. I didn't tell people where I came from, what my life was like.
right.
But getting this book out there and not only having so much support and positive feedback, but having so many people we've known our whole lives
Yeah,
confess to us, like, oh, my kid's going through this, or I went through this when I was
right.
a kid, um, and really stimulating a lot of positive discussion and healing. That's been huge, and that's really helped me not necessarily close the chapter, but honor the chapter in a way that feels um, fitting, instead of like something I should be ashamed of.
Right. So I give you a little bit of my background, and I have similarities to you in a way. I was born in 1940, and that was in November. My mother and father were married in 1938. They were in love, and they were building a future. They had a daughter and a son early in their marriage, and then I was born in the early part of the war, and my dad was drafted into the Dutch army in April of 1940, and for 5 years they would not know if he was dead or alive. The last they heard from him, they had heard that he was caught in Rotterdam in the bombing of Rotterdam by the German army, and so we were living under a dictatorship. And so I still remember from the time I was 3.5 years old, 3.5, 4 years old, hundreds of bombers in the air, hundreds of them, the sound I will never forget. And we were living close to the German border, and in the distance we could see cities burning. And my mother would take us outside because she felt safer outside than inside. And then we were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945. And, you know, it had made such an impression on me that I always knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And then when we got liberated by the Canadian Army that pushed out the German Army, we saw far too much that we should not have seen. They blew up the bridge in front of our house. A lot of people were shot. We saw bodies, dead bodies, and all those things that somebody at 5 years old should not see. And then, you know, that affected me with PTSD. I can still feel, even then, the winter of 1944-45 was the hunger winter. There was no food. They had cut off all the food. So every morning we would go, my sister and brother, 1 and 2 years older than me, with gunny sacks into the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did as kids, because they would not shoot us, they would boot us one in the back, and we just came back the following day. But I can still, even now, 80 years later, I can still feel the feeling of hunger and the feeling of cold. And then I was not overly successful in school. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And some people suggested, send him to the mentally disturbed school. And my parents said, no, we're not going to do that. So then they said, we're going to get him to learn a trade. And my dad was in the lumber business. My grandfather was master carpenter. Though at 13, they sent me to a furniture factory and then to become a furniture maker. And so, you know, at 13, and I loved what I was doing there. And then when I was 17, I wanted to go to Canada, but they wouldn't let me. I was too young. And then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years. And then when I was 23, your age, I finally decided to go to Canada, but I kind of felt I had failed. All my friends in school that went to grade 7, I failed it 3 times, all went on to college and university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it bothered me, although I was always an optimistic individual, but it always bothered me. So I kind of felt I had to start anew again in a new country. So I left Holland, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, left for Canada. But I wanted to build a lumber mill. So I left, and I knew the timber was in British Columbia, so flew into Montreal, took the train across Canada, and then landed in Vancouver, and close to Whistler, as you know, and you flew into there, and then went to the immigration office there. Fortunately, it was a German fellow, and I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George, 500 miles north. That's a boom town. That's where they're building lumber mills and all the other kinds. So I took the bus to Prince George, And now I'm sitting in Prince George, close to my studio here. I can virtually see the Greyhound station where it was at one point. And I came off the bus. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I did have lots of is attitude, is that no matter how tough things are, I always know tomorrow will be a better day. And I already had that from the time I was a kid, and in my own world. The other one that I had is passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And the other one that I had is work ethic. And even now still, I work harder than anybody. Even at nearly 84, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed. And then, and as I build, I started with nothing from the ground up as a cleanup man, and then a lumber pilot, could speak the language, gradually learned it. And within a year and a half, I was a superintendent of one of the larger mills here. Within 2 years, I owned a piece of a little mill, and then now, many years later, I started then a company after I was here for 10 years that now has developed in an organization. I'm not here to brag about how successful John is. That's not what this is all about. But as I built one company and other companies, everybody said, "You're so successful." I didn't feel that way. I kind of felt I had still failed. And then one thing that happened to me, a couple of things happened to me, is that one day I walked into a store here, I picked up a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, and I opened the book, and it was about ADHD. And I said, "Oh my God, now I know who I am." And I wrote in the book in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it, is now I finally know who I am. And that was in 1997. The book was written by Dr. Halliwell, actually, in 1993, and, who wrote 18 books, 5 on distraction, is a frequent speaker around the world. He's ADHD and dyslexic, actually. And I had him, your podcast is 271. I had him on my podcast a number of months ago, and his podcast is 203. And so talking about ADHD, but up to that point, I had no idea about ADHD. And the more I found out about it and started looking at Google and all the other things, then I started realizing that it's a superpower. And so now a lot of times I write books. I wrote one on ADHD, actually, ADHD Unlocked, very popular. And then the first book that I wrote is Against All Odds, this one here. And it's not about how successful John is, but rather about all the ups and downs along the way. And then I'm writing another book, actually, that's about fitness and well-being. There's a story behind that as well, that living young, dying old. And that's coming out in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think. That's a picture of me, actually. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And so,
there you go.
And so the story is this one from my perspective, Ryan. I was there, when everybody said, "You're a failure because you failed grade 3, failed grade 7, and then you're a laborer," and then wondering if you should go to the mentally challenged school, and then saying to myself, I have to leave, and then start over anew here, just my suitcase, my 3 books, and my 2 sets of clothes, and then only taking $150 when I left Amsterdam, and had only $25.47 coming here. But I knew if I would go back, I'd be either in a box or successful. And so, but it changed my life. That's what it did, so. And so subsequently, I'm very active as a writer. I do a lot of podcasting. I speak to a lot of young people in particular about trying to find your passion, living the dream, but also about ADHD and understanding it, or other challenges relating to the traditional way of teaching in schools. And I speak about that frequently.
Wow. First off, it's an incredible journey, and it was amazing to hear what you've overcome and what has shaped you. The ADHD thing was a big realization for me. Um, over the course of my life, they tried to call me a lot of things. The PTSD, as that sort of manifested, they tried to blame it on me in those schools and say, like, if I'm clearly responding the way I am to their help, um, because I must be bipolar, I must be autistic. Like, how can I not understand that them putting me on the floor and getting on top of me and covering my mouth and leaving me with bruises and rug burns isn't help? It must be my fault. So I had a complicated identity with diagnosis, and you know, they told me, oh, you're never going to be able to regulate your emotions. You're never going to be able to socialize. And I would internalize that. And my therapist, Dr. Favero, who I had when I was in my mid to late teens, he was the first person to be like, I don't think that you're being medicated correctly. I don't think that you're bipolar. I don't think that you're autistic. And as soon as I shattered that glass ceiling of like, well, if it's not something that I can't control, that means the ball's in my court. That means I should be learning how to regulate my emotions right now. I should be learning how to be better at socializing right now. And that coincided really beautifully with getting back into public school. And that was another reason why it went so well, not just because they weren't restraining me, but because I believed in my heart that I had the power. And later in life, it's funny, I have the modern version of this. I found an Instagram account called ADHD Couples that posts infographics about ADHD, and backed with research. And essentially, my whole life I'd always been told, like, by my family actually, like, oh, you don't have ADHD. Like, we tried Ritalin and it only made you more hyper. Well, it's a stimulant, Oh, you definitely don't have ADHD because you almost get more fixated on one thing instead of getting distracted by everything else. And it's like, I learned, oh, well, you know what? That's actually a trait of ADHD. That's the hyper focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so for me, the sad part about me was that already I had that obviously in grade 3, I had it in grade 7, distraction and all those things related to ADHD, but I found the book here in a store, and I already, at that time, it took me 5 years before I would go to my doc that was delivered our 2 daughters, and then at the same time was a personal friend, because I was ashamed of it. So I went into his office and he said, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. So by then, I was already 62 years old. And from the time that I was 13 and had no confidence and felt that I was lesser than, not know, and being told that I probably was dumb, stupid, didn't have this and that, all those negative stuff, so that walking around with that and still being successful in spite of it all. And then the other part that helped me, I was not very good at communicating. It's too self-conscious for many years. And then I joined an organization called Toastmasters, and very interesting. And I spent with them 10 years and became a distinguished Toastmaster, gave me confidence. And then knowing that I had ADHD, so very late in life, I'm working at my 5th book now, my 6th book. In spite of all the things that I've had or didn't have, I'm a very good writer, always have been. Even when I was in school, I'm very good with numbers. Since, being this thing with Toastmaster, I'm a very good in-demand speaker. And obviously, I'm very, very active in podcasting, and in spite of all those things. And then I feel I have an obligation to share my story with others. That's what I'm doing with you and others in my book. So I'm going to get Scott to get your address and and we'll send you a copy of my books. And the other one that's coming out, this one here, is coming out in the next 3 weeks. I'm going to send you a copy of that as well. And so for
Amazing.
me, it's becoming very important to share my story with others.
Yeah, I feel like I relate to that a lot. And I feel like a thing that I have been doing is I talk a lot about my process and what I'm really feeling, what's really going on for me, on my social media, because I feel like a lot of people, um, who are athletes, um, feel like they need to keep up this image of like, I'm just going to promote cool athletic stuff that I'm doing. And it's not lost on me through the messages I get and the people who talk to me is that there are people who look up to me as an athlete and want to, be like me and want to learn from me. And I find it really important to share the emotional process that I go through and like the journey that I've had, because I don't want people to think that it's always easy for me or that it's just magic, and because it's not happening for them or because they have mental blockades they have to get through, um, because it's hard for them to like reach that headspace they feel like they need to be at to do the things they want to do, that maybe they just don't have what it takes, but I have all of that too. It's not that it's just so easy for me that I can do these things. It's that I work hard at it and that I'm determined to overcome those things. So I want people to see that so they can have someone to relate to and be like, all right, Ryan went through that same thing that I'm going through, but he figured it out. So maybe I can figure it out too.
And the same, Ryan, as it is for me, that if people watch you and me and then seeing that I have gone through it all the way, and it was not always easy, and it has been difficult along the way, but it is possible, and and to gain confidence. And then the other part is what I say to young people in particular that are sometimes critical of themselves. Every single individual is special. There's only one of them on this earth. And to have pride in who you are is very, very important. And to have confidence as to what you can do. And so to have that confidence that allows you to explore things that you are good at, whatever that may be, or that you enjoy, and find that passion and living the dream is very, very important. But to have that positive attitude, and for me, it is a lot of times attitude, passion, work ethic, what will follow with success.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I really like that attitude, passion, work ethic. Like that really, those are the ingredients, you know. You can't control what your background was or what your circumstances that you were given with. Um, and you can't necessarily control, um, the opportunities, the learning opportunities, the chances to do this or do that. But what you can control is your attitude, and how much you're trying, to be where you want to be. I was listening to this artist. I don't know if you follow music much. This artist named G Herbo, and he has this song called Intuition. And over the instead of a chorus, it's just him sort of speaking about his life. And he had this quote that I thought was really beautiful, and it's that I see people talking about where they want to be, why they aren't there yet, and it's always two reasons: either you just haven't fully committed to yourself to where you want to be, or your time just hasn't come yet. So
Exactly.
that's really it. If you're fully committed to where you want to be and you are trying and you're showing up with that attitude, the passion, and the work ethic, it's just a matter of time.
Never, never, never give up. Stay the course. The other thing that's important to me is that I fly around a lot in my businesses and commercially. I always, in North America, we do a lot of business in the United States. And when I sit in the airplane, I look out of the window in the United States as well as in Canada, I look out of the window and say, it's paradise. It's paradise. We are so lucky as to where we live. I lived in a dictatorship, during the Second World War. I have the experience of what happens in war. It's not a question that once the war is over, everything goes back to normal. It simply doesn't. It will go on, in some cases, for generations. I saw it. And sometimes I think people here don't always fully realize that. And for young people, what I do a lot of times, every year, and have done for the last 10, 15 years, is that on Remembrance Day, here November the 11th, during that week, I do presentations at least 4 or 5 schools where I talk about what does it really mean, the 2 minutes of silence. Why are they important? Why it is important to remember the commitments that the people made that liberated those countries and did with us. And then look around the world and all the issues that are problems that are going on. And the Ukraine is a good example, and the Middle East, but a lot of countries that it's very, very difficult to live there. We collectively in the United States, Canada, and North America, we are very, very fortunate as to where we are. And there are lots of opportunities. But for those people that worry if they're not good enough or they're being challenged, never give up. You are special. There's only one of you, and there are opportunities. Find your passion and living the dream. That part is important. Ryan,
Absolutely.
It was delightful to have you on my podcast. And for those people watching us, and see the discussion between myself and Ryan DeLena, an amazing young man that had challenges along the way, where I can share my story with him. It was quite a podcast, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. This is incredible. This is a great discussion. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to come on here and tell my story and to hear yours. And I feel like we're both on very similar wavelengths in what we're trying to do in the world and what we're trying to share with people. And I think people need to recognize the power that they have at their fingertips, no matter who they are and what circumstances they come from. We can all make it to where we want to be.
Excellent, well said, Ryan. And make sure I will get you, sign the books for you and send them to you.
Thank you.
Stay in touch with me. And again, thanks. Say hello to your dad, Bob, and Mary, and your mom. Take care.
Will do. And before I go, for all the listeners, if you're looking to find me, you can find me on YouTube as Ryan DeLena. I make my own videos. And on Instagram as extreme_Ryan_DeLena. That's where you have most updates. If you reach out to me, I will most likely respond to you. I respond to everybody. And you can find all the information on my pages about the book and where to purchase it. I look forward to hearing from all of you.
And also for the guests watching us, subscribe, share, make comments. And again, Ryan, thanks very much. And you take care.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
You too. Bye-bye. Is he still there?
All right.
Hey, Ryan, how did it go? Set? Did it go good for you?
It went great. Yeah, it went good for me. I definitely, it's funny. I feel like I come on all these things and just spoil the book for people. But I think we got to a really good space there, and had a really cool discussion. So I'm happy with it.
Excellent. Stay in touch with us and follow us. And
Absolutely, we'll do.
And we'll send you the books and I'll sign them for you.
Nice. And send me the link when this thing is out, so I can watch it back and I can share it with my followers, and we can get people exposed to your page and what you're doing, and hopefully help some of the enjoyers of my book find your books and enjoy those too.
Absolutely. And we'll release this tomorrow morning.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, Ryan. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.